Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Chris Wooley, the photo professor, and this is Office Hours. We're up to episode number 5, and today is tax day, everybody's favorite day. I know you just love giving the government money just like I do. Instead, we're going to take a little distraction and have some fun in Photoshop, looking at images, talking photography, and having a nice little escape. I'm personally excited. We've got my image competition, state conference is coming up this weekend, so going to be in the depths of professional photography, networking, and that community. I think that is one of the best things that we can have. If you have a local photography group or guild or some sort of network that's there, being able to connect and exchange ideas and just catch up and just be the social aspect of photography as well as the professional side of things. It's way worth it. If you get a chance to attend any of your local conferences, I highly recommend it. So we've got a couple of questions from today, or for today's episode, as well as a bunch of images to look at, so I'm excited for that. Did want to follow up a little bit on the best travel camera. Had some nice emails from several of you. I see Bruce, you're on the call right now too, with recommendations for different types of cameras. And kind of a fun one that we didn't really talk about are the smaller, powerful zoom cameras, those super zoom cameras, things that have a really small form factor to them, but some crazy magnifications. Bruce had brought up a great point that it's really nice to have something that doesn't look too fancy or expensive when you're traveling, so you don't get victimized at all or somebody taking some opportunity with you. So that can be a really nice aspect. And then having something that's got the ability to get that really extreme zoom or range, also a really nice call on that. So something to consider if you are looking for those travel cameras. The little personal pocket zooms might be a good choice for you as well, depending on what your needs and goals are. So kind of fun looking at it that way. Next, I had a question from Heidi, and I think this is a really fun one, and I'm excited to chat about it. And she wanted to know about lens distortion. And specifically, when getting feedback on images, we sometimes hear judges say something like, that wasn't the right lens choice, or there's distortion in the image. So I want to take a peek at what that actually means. So I'm going to pull up Photoshop here, and I've got just a white image with a black grid on top of it so that we can look and see what distortion's actually going to do. So I'm going to open up Camera Raw Filter here, and I'm just going Filter, Camera Raw Filter. And that's going to pull up our nice menu system here, and I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom. And we've got a section called Optics. So Optics is where we can control our distortion on our cameras. And you may see something similar in like Lightroom or Capture One, something there, but there's two main types of distortion that we're going to see from the lens construction itself. First one we have is if we go and we start coming in, we have what's known as a pin cushion effect. And this was a square image that we started with. Notice the inside looks pretty square, but the outside we get some kind of aggressive distortion happening with it. And what's happening is that we're essentially almost like a pin cushion that you're pushing in on that middle part of it, and we're starting to distort the images, particularly on the edges. So we're going to see pin cushion type distortion when we have more telephoto lenses. So those larger zooms are going to start to do that just a little bit on the outside of the image. Now, not a big deal if we're going to be cropping in or if you correct for it, like what we have here with this little slider. Here we can control the distortion amount. Kind of cool being able to do that. Opposite side of it, and we'll get into more in depth in this in just a minute, but the opposite side is when we start having this barrel distortion. Notice how the middle part now is very exaggerated, and we're in fact losing the outside edges just a little bit on there. So this is called barrel distortion, and this is usually from wider angle lenses. So now you might be wondering, how do they come up with pin cushion and barrel distortion? Well, a barrel distortion is named after like a barrel, kind of think like a cask or a big barrel of wine. So it's kind of barrel shaped, so that's why they came up with that. And the pin cushion looks like our pin cushions or pillows, where it comes in and it's almost like you're pushing right in the middle of it. So that's where we got the names of them from. So kind of nice thing though with digital photography is that we are able to very easily correct for this distortion. In fact, most lens manufacturers already have the profiles set inside of like Lightroom and Capture One, where we can automatically correct for this distortion that's happening from the lenses by itself. And so it's not as big of a deal as it previously was, like say in the film days, because we are now able to easily adjust for this distortion. And this is just a visual example inside of Camera Raw of what it might be doing, where it says, oh, we're going to need exactly this much to do it. And there's a whole bunch of fancy mathematical formulas in terms of what the actual science is behind getting rid of this distortion. But luckily, most of these programs already have it set for us. In fact, some cameras, like a lot of Micro Four Thirds cameras that suffer from even more extreme distortion, already combat that. When you're taking the photo, they're automatically applying that to that raw file that's got that formula built in. So we're getting rid of that distortion right off the bat. So in terms of the physics or the optics of our distortion, this is what's happening. Those are the two main types that we have. There is a secret third type called the mustache distortion. Kind of looks like a handlebar mustache, and it's when we combine elements of both of these, mostly found in older lenses, but worth mentioning mostly because of the cool name that's there. But for the most part, we don't have to worry about it too much as long as we've got a profile for your lens. So kind of cool that we can just load that in and be ready to go with it. But there is another discussion when it comes to distortion. And it's not the optics that are being distorted, but instead it's the perspective. And this is one that's going to get us most of the time when we're looking at, say, competition photography and saying, is this the right lens choice? We're not talking about a traditional barrel or pincushion distortion, although that could be a technical factor of it. Instead, what we're looking at is what is our perspective from where the camera or the lens is and what our subject is. So inherently, let's say we have a wide angle lens. And so we're shooting at, say, 18 millimeters. I'm just making this up, but we've got something that's really, really wide. If we want our subject to fill the frame, we've got to get really close to it so that we're not very far away. Okay, so if we're really close to our subject now, we've got a little bit of that perspective that's happening. So how close we are to our subject is now going to be really, really large. So our subject that's really close is going to be kind of enlarged or distorted, and things that are further away in the background are going to be a lot smaller. Okay, that's why we can get some cool things like compression happening when we use telephoto lenses, right? Because we can now take that compression and we can go on the opposite side of it. So we've got more space in between. So our subject's further away. The relative distance between our subject and the background is also changing too. So we can now flatten out that image so we feels like we have less depth. So let's put this into something that might be a little bit more applicable, or something says, oh yeah, that makes sense. And this would be just looking at ourselves in the mirror. So sometimes when we take selfies, they look a little bit different. They look weird. And let's talk about why that is. Why does a selfie look different than, say, a normal portrait? And that's all comes down to our size. Most of the time when we're seeing ourselves, besides Zoom calls, it's going to probably be in the bathroom mirrors. We're getting ready. We're doing our hair. We're doing our makeup, brushing your teeth. Chances are you're not standing 6 or 10 feet away from the mirror, but you might be closer to 2 or 3 feet away from the mirror. So we are now really, really close to where our subject is, only a couple of feet away. So we are seeing a bunch of distortion just because we're so close to what that subject is. Now, if we're talking to somebody else, we might be further away. Instead of being like 2 feet away from where the subject is, we might be closer to 6 feet away. So if you're just talking with somebody, say in a small group or going out and having a meal, they're going to be several feet away. That's kind of a normalized or standard perspective, okay, what we're used to seeing somebody. And if we have something that's super far away, like off in the distance, and you're looking at somebody, it's kind of hard to tell their dimensionality based on that background because it's so far away. So if we were to take all 3 of those images, the really, really close, the medium, and the super far away, and we were to magically take all of those and crop them in so that all of the subjects appeared to be the same size, the images that are closer, where the subject was closer to the sensor, is going to have a little bit more depth. So the tip of the nose is going to appear even closer than what the ears are coming back. So we're going to have that little bit of perspective that's there. If we're going to that medium one, it's going to look like we've got some dimensionality, but not super flat. And if we have the one that was taken with that telephoto, it's going to start to kind of compress that a little bit more. So it's going to feel almost cut out. You won't be able to tell much difference between where the tip of the nose is and the ears are. So that's what we're talking about when we're discussing our lens choice, is that sometimes that's just going to control, just based on how much our magnification is from those millimeters that are there, how far away your subject is from the lens. So when we're talking about the wrong lens choice for, say, photographing a person or a product, we're just essentially coming down to saying, how far away are you from the subject? And so if we can get a little bit away from a subject, then it can help get rid of some of that distortion. But that distortion isn't always bad. Sometimes it's really cool to see it in a new or unique way. Like if we were looking at, say, a product shot of a lighter, it'd be really cool to be up close to it and make it look like this larger-than-life hero type image. Kind of takes a trivial object and it adds some importance to it. And maybe you have something with or a subject with really, really large nose and you want to compress it so that it doesn't appear so big. Well, we can use a telephoto lens and we can compress that so that it doesn't feel like it's distorted as much. So it's just kind of making decisions or making choices about how you want that image to feel. So if you're doing it intentionally and you say, yes, I like how this is feeling, I like how it's got depth, or it feels like you're right there on it, that could be a great thing. If you maybe don't want to have that in your face sort of feeling, then we're going to go towards that little bit more compression, or a larger focal length will get us there. So kind of a fun way to look at that. So thank you, Heidi, for the question. That was kind of fun. All right, so we're going to dive in and start looking at images now. So I'm going to come back into Photoshop, and we're going to get rid of our distortion image. And let's see what we got up here. We've got this image of a cat from Susan. So looking at it, I'm very, very impressed you got the cat to stay still. That's just hard, and I do appreciate that we are on level with where the chair is. I'm not seeing the top of the chair, I'm not seeing the bottom of it. So it makes the cat look a little bit larger than life, add some importance to it, right? Again, perspective, not necessarily how close we are to the subject, but what angle we're shooting them from. So really, really neat. And I do appreciate the color harmony that we have in this. Lots of warm tones coming through. But there are a couple of things I think that we can do to clean this up. I am noticing a couple of small Photoshop errors. It looks like maybe there was some artwork done to the top of this. I'm seeing a kind of a line that's there, or coming down. There we go. Coming down, we got a little bit of something on the bottom. And there may have been some artwork here. So we'll kind of pretend that those things don't exist, because, hey, this is magic, right? And let's look at what we can do to enhance this image. I'm just going to go ahead and make a duplicate layer. And let's open up Camera Raw again, because we can do a whole bunch of stuff all in one place here. And I think this is a great image to look at it. So I'm going to use some of the cool masking features. So I'm going to come over here to the masking tab. We're going to click that, and let's work on the background. So I've got the background selected. It got part of the chair that's in there too. So if I wanted to, I could add to this mask, try to get a little bit more. Let's go ahead and do that. And I'll just paint in some of these areas that I want included, like this edge of this chair. So we're just gonna paint that in right there. Get a little bit, and a little bit over here too. I'm just painting those in so that we're getting everything that's not the cat. There we go. Got the background selected. So now we can start having fun. So I'm going to come down here to our exposure, and I'm just going to take down this exposure so we're not quite as bright. Now it's giving some contrast into that cat, so it doesn't feel like we're so bright and dominant, because we got some beautiful mid-tones that are coming here, and that's the area that I really want to live on for this. I am going to lower the contrast of this so that the background doesn't pull as much focus, especially those deep dark shadowed areas. We'll even kind of lighten those up just a little bit. Maybe lighten those blacks and keep it darker. So we've got a nice kind of neutral dark background that's going on. I'm digging it. Let's take this same mask and we're just gonna duplicate it and invert it. So this means we just want the cat selected at this point. Look, we got our kitty that's up here, and we're pretty accurate. There's a couple areas that weren't masked out. I'm not worried about those right now. I'm just gonna go ahead and bring down the exposure on this cat. Notice how we're pulling in these beautiful details that were over here. I'm just loving what's happening up here. We're gonna take the shadows and just kind of lighten those up just a little teeny tiny bit, as well as the blacks. There we go. Now we've got some beautiful tones that are coming across. We aren't blowing out any of those highlights, and we still have some really nice contrast on our image. So I'm kind of digging what's happening here. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit OK on these. And let's let that apply. And I want to unify. I'm going to just do one more thing, because you can never have enough, right? I'm just going to sample maybe one of these oranges from the cat's fur right here. That looks pretty good. And let's do it as a new layer. I'm just hitting Alt Backspace, or I'm on a PC, so we can do that one. And I'm going to change this blending mode, see if I can talk today, from normal to color. So this is going to essentially make this a black and white image with that color overlay, but I just want color harmony. I want to tie in the colors of the cat and the colors in the background. So I'm going to take this opacity and we're going to pull it way down, somewhere probably around like 5 or 10%. 10%'s looking pretty nice. So here's that before and after on it. Just kind of unifies and gives a little bit of warmth to that background, just ties all those colors in together. So looking at this image, we just darkened the background and lowered the contrast. We darkened the subject just a little bit and added a little bit of color harmony to this with just a color fill layer set real low at 10%. How do we feel on this image, before and after? Do you like the darker? Do you like the lighter? We got thumbs up. We'll go with it. Okay. There we go. There we go. All right. Now we're getting into it. Let's move on. Let's look at something else. Cool. So we've got an image from John here, and we've got a gorgeous woman and some really nice stuff that's done here. I got to talk about some of the cool things that are here. I really appreciate that we've got some natural framing from this curtain or fabric that she's in. It looks like it just wraps around behind her, and I really, really appreciate that we aren't blowing out the tones on here, the colors. And this is super easy to do. I'm going to pull up my info. I love the info because it's going to give us our red, green, and blue values that are here. So I can just hover over stuff and I can see what the red, green, and blue values are. So normally what I'm expecting, if we're going to be something with a vibrant red like this, is that the red channel that we see up there, right now it's at 162. If we were to look at that, that might be closer to fully blowing out what's possible in that red, like being at 255 that's on there. And this one, it's handled very beautifully, where we're only doing about half of that red channel, and we still got some green and blue to balance things out, just to make it so that we've got that nice vivid color. So I really appreciate that we are not blowing out those reds inside the image. So our framing and composition, really, really nice. There's a couple of tweaks that I might make to the image though. I'm looking at the red control and the red spill. Because we are shooting our subject on red, and we've got so much of a red dominant color, and red is very, very common inside of skin tones. We're starting to get things like on the fingers and on the nose, a little bit on the chin, that are getting some of that red bleed to it, as well as somewhat in the hair. So if you are dealing with red in your images, and I'm talking things like sunburns or rosacea, anything like that, generally we want to try to neutralize some of those reds, make them a little bit more towards the orange side. And I use this on almost all of my images that I work on. I've actually even created an action for it. We're going to just remove the red. I'm going to hit play on my action, and it just created a little preset so I can go through and just paint out areas. So I'm just using a mask, and I'm just painting the skin tones. And I'm going to go pretty quickly, making sure that I don't get stuff that we don't want, like the red lipstick that's on there. But I'm getting everything else, maybe a little bit in that hair, a little bit down here on the fingers. And I'll show you what I'm doing first, and then I'll show you how we go about doing it. So we just have this red that's pulled out now, and we just turned it a little bit more orange. So here's kind of the before and after. Don't know if we can see that. It's pretty subtle, but we just added that little bit of that warmth tan and got rid of that color contamination. And if it's too strong, we can always pull back the opacity just a little bit, maybe around 65% or so we get those nice natural tones, and some of the reds do come through. So now let me tell you how I go about doing this. I put it into an action because I use it literally every day, every single image. Somebody's got some underlying red tones that we don't want. So let me show you what I'm doing with it. And as we can see, a little bit of a cheater, it's a hue saturation adjustment layer. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete this layer, and I'll show you how to make your own. So we're gonna come up here and hit the adjustment layers, and we're gonna go and hit hue saturation. So that's going to pull up this, and I've got the properties menu. And if you don't see properties, you can come out here to window properties. But I've got my properties over here. I'll make that just a little bit bigger. And I can see that we've got all these different colors. And I want to specifically be focusing on the reds. So I'm going to hit the red tones that are here. And now this is going to bring up only the red colors. So we're only going to be affecting those red colors. So I like to have a little bit of fun with it when I'm initially setting what these values are. So I'm going to take the hue, and I'm just going to say, let's change all these reds 180 degrees. So everything that's red becomes blue. And we can see that a lot of this image has red in it. So we need to kind of hone it down because we don't want it to affect all reds. We just want to kind of tone it down just a little bit. So down at the very bottom, kind of sneak in here, is this little before after section that gives us our adjustment properties. And what we can do is we can define our start and stop points on this by dragging these sliders. So I'm going to start with the red ones, and we can see we want to include a whole bunch of that. And we can bring it in really close if we only want to hit certain tones. And this outside edge controls how smooth that transition gets. So the closer that I bring into it, the more abrupt it is. The further out, the smoother it's going to be. So I can see that I can get this kind of fine-tuned in here, somewhere around this area where it's only hitting those really deep reds, which is what we're looking for right there. So this is extreme again, because we're just changed it to 180. That's way too much. I'm going to go ahead and reset that back to 0. So right now it's doing absolutely nothing. I can click on and off. It's not doing anything because we've just said, hey, let's select the reds and then do nothing with them. So now that we've got these reds selected, here's kind of the secret sauce that we've got that. So we've got these numbers already dialed in. So now if we want to reduce just the reds and make them look more tan, so I'm talking getting rid of the sunburn and making it look like a tan, we're just going to type in a magic number here. Instead of 0, we're going to type in the number 6. And 6 is my favorite spot on this. I've played around with it so much, and having 6 just takes those sunburns and makes them into healthy skin tones. So we don't need to do anything else. Here's that before and after, hitting the entire image right up there. And now I like to kind of make it so that it's only hitting on specific areas. So I'm going to invert this mask with Control or Command I. We've got it. So now we can come up and just paint in those areas that we want. And we got it. That's our effect. So I use this when doing portraits all the time. When I want to get rid of those red undertones, we get it so we get those nice tan colors. And then if we need to pull back just a little bit of those tones, we just reduce the opacity that's on it. Anybody else do this? I love doing it. It's such a cool way to just pull out some of those undertones or reflective spills, or if somebody, say, had like a runny nose or something, and we just want to kind of pull those ones down. Anybody else do this in their images, like to pull out the reds from that? Let's hear in chat out here. It's cool. Some people do that's on there. So I really, really like just making an action for it. If you want, what do we think in chat? Do you want me to email out an action so that you guys can have this and just hit the play button on it instead of having to create your own each time?
Yes,
yeah.
please.
Yeah. All right. We'll do that.
This is something I use a great deal because every time my husband is in a picture with me, his face goes really red as though he were Irish, or shall we say, was spending a bit too much time in the pub. And he is not that way to appearance. And so, yes, that's a big deal that I use a huge amount of time.
It's one of those things that when you're doing any sort of portrait retouching those skins, just that little bit, even if they have just a little bit extra rosy cheeks or it's winter time and their skin's a little bit dry, I can just give that extra little polish to it. So I'll send it out to everybody that's signed up on here, so you've got it too. All right, let's look at more. Got another image from John. He sent in quite a few of them. So we've got a commercial shot of some gumdrops or candy, I'm assuming, of some point, some part. And it's kind of a cool image. I'm digging what's going on. I really appreciate that we've got vibrant colors. It makes it feel fun, right? If we're thinking of candy, we want that excitement. We want that energy. We want those sugar crystals coming in. And he does a really nice job of adding that vibrance and life to it. I also appreciate the subtle gradient where we have almost a spotlight effect and then a natural gradient that's coming through on those edges, just keeping us locked in. So let's look at the composition, because John's done something really, really nice here, and I got to brag on him a little bit. So I've just got my crop tool that's coming up, and by default, I've got the rule of thirds that's up here. Okay, so we can cycle through these. Not everybody knows, but we can cycle through just by hitting the letter O. We can go through this list and look at it. And so if we look at our rule of thirds, it's like, okay, we've got kind of our hero that's up here in this upper third, and then we kind of come down. We've got some nice story that's on here. But let's go through some of these. This one not doing much. This one's kind of cool. Look at these nice diagonal lines that are coming through, right? We've got some nice motion and some energy. Notice how closely we're lining up on these points that are up here. This one, though, is where we're really getting it. Look at this angle that this top one's in when we start to get this. that's just too almost perfect to be unintentional that's on here. Looking at these lines, just that bottom one lining up perfectly from our top to our bottom coming down here. I have a feeling that this is not accidental, and this is some serious design consideration that's coming in. So really nice job. I just had to brag on him for a second because I'm very, very impressed with that. Anytime that we can do that, like if you're doing a composite or something, putting up some of these like golden ratios or overlays are a really nice way of determining where do I need to put this element, what's going on with it. So kind of cool that we've got that going with this image, and I really dig that composition element on it. Now, let's talk. We started out the episode today by looking at perspectives, and I really appreciate that this one's looking up at our objects. It makes something that's trivial, just candy, feel important. It's got some weight. It's got some gravity to it. So really, really nice way of giving us that kind of hero shot where we're looking up, and we've got some natural tension that's in this too. This piece feels like it's almost going to be falling off. This one might be toppling over. It feels like it's kind of in motion, right? So it's kind of neat. It's not just a static fine art study on it, but instead we've got some really cool intention that feels like we're just in that pinnacle moment right before it topples down and we get to pick up that piece. So what could we do to strengthen this image? I think this one's going to come down to what the particular use is for it. This is a clean shot. If I was this candy manufacturer, I'd be totally happy with it, right? This is going to sell my product well. If I were doing something a little bit more editorial, then I might consider having some motion, like maybe we want this bottom piece to already be falling. Like maybe we're capturing that fall mid-fall so that one piece is just starting there. We can see the toppling of the dominoes right before they happen. That could be something that's kind of cool too. Adds a different story to it. Might be a different usage depending on what the message is. Another thing that I'm looking at is how we've lit each of these separate objects. So if we look at this top one, it almost has this iridescent feeling, like maybe light shooting through it and we're getting the semi-opaqueness. And our ones that are lower, we don't have that light that's hitting through it, so it's more reflective versus being backlit. I think I would personally prefer to have a little bit more consistency between the two. I do like that they glow and that we get the texture that's on it, but I really appreciate the moodiness of the ones down here where we don't have as much light coming through it. So it's just a matter of preference and how we're getting this light coming through. This one's stacked up. This one is just a single one. So we're going to have a little bit of variance in terms, this is probably more accurate in terms of the actual physics of the scene, but I think I'd prefer to have that little bit more opaqueness on some of these top ones so that I can really appreciate those sugar crystals coming through. So nice job on that one. And let's move on. Cool. Actually, I'm going to come back to this one. I'm going to start from the opposite side on this one. We've got this image from Misty, and holy cow, is this a dreamy black and white image? And it's like, oh, this is so cool that we've got all this great texture. These tones are handled beautifully. We're not blowing out our highlights. I've got to pull up the histogram on this one. Look at that. Like, this is a beautiful histogram. Our whites over here, we're not hitting those pure whites. We've got all sorts of information, those midtones, and we're not hitting our pure blacks. We've got all those juicy details that are there. I'm just here for it. So when looking at this image, what can we do to improve it? The processing, I think, is just done masterfully. I'm totally on board with it. The crop of the image feels a little bit tight for me. We are losing the shoulders of him, so it's just kind of this head that sticks out and floats out of this image, which is a little bit distracting. Maybe if it was an inspirational image and we had a message that was coming over here, that it'd feel appropriate with it, but I just wish we had a teeny tiny bit more so that it wasn't as tight of a headshot. The other thing that I'm noticing on it is that our focus seems to be on his hair coming up front, and we are missing the critical focus on the eye. And this is getting pretty picky. You have to zoom in quite a bit in order to actually see it, but we're just missing that critical focus on the eye. So if we can get the eye that's closest to the cameras, the eye that I prefer to have in focus if I have to choose between the two of them, but no matter the subject, if it has an eye, I like to have the eye in focus. So this one, I think it was just finding the object that was closest with high contrast, locking in there, but the processing, absolutely stunning that's on it. And it just wants me to go backwards. Okay, we got this one from Tammy, and we've got a nice sunset scene that's coming here with some really, really deep, dramatic silhouette style lighting. I do appreciate that we've got some nice colors that are coming through, and we've got some subjects that are down here. We've got some boats that are in the water. So in terms of being there, I bet this was absolutely breathtaking. It's like, holy cow, I got to capture this moment. In terms of the photographic technique that's on it, it does get blocked up, especially with our subjects that we have here. Like, we're kind of decapitating them just a little bit. And that's just because we only have light that's pretty low coming from behind, which means that we're going to get those deep silhouettes. We're seeing it even in the wave that's up here. We're seeing it in the boat that's back there. And this is one of those, it's like, if we had just a little bit more light, or we were able to light our subjects independently, then we'd be able to have that strong center of interest. As it is with them so dark, we're not going to be able to recover much. Even if we were to, say, like, crank up the levels on it, just trying to get in some brightness, some lightness here, like, yeah, I can kind of pull those out, but we don't really gain any details that are in there. That's not adding to the story with it. So we aren't going to be able to pull out and recover these ones, which means that this is probably a fatal part of this image. We could try cropping and say, okay, let's take and maybe have it so that we have that bottom wave that's on there. Kind of cool, but with a wave backlit, we don't necessarily get the story or know that it is a wave. And if we go and say maybe crop out above the wave, could be kind of cool. I've got a nice scene that's up here, some good water. We are a split composition here, but I've got these boats with that blockiness that's there. I know that they're boats, but it's not a strong enough center of interest where I'm able to say, oh, that's a cool boat. This is a story about a boat in a beautiful scene. So we're looking for a little bit of light, like maybe if we could have had some of the light just slightly grazing this, or just a little bit earlier before the sunset so we get some details or definition in there. Whew. It's really hard doing this. I know I've been there a million times where it's just like, oh, this is so beautiful. I just want to capture this. But it's hard to get that dynamic range that's in there, especially with our cameras. Not as good as what the human eye does. We can't constantly adapt on it. All right. Well, this one's just going to keep coming up. We're going to talk about it. So this is a fun, fine art composition and a composite. We've got some artwork that's done to it. So I'm going to zoom in so we can see some of the cool elements that are here. And this is again from John. And we can see we've got some really nice rim lighting that's coming through, just popping our subject from this black background, rendered really well, especially in those darker areas like the hair. That's really nice. And then we get kind of the fun little treats that are coming through, like the missing arm. So we've got some cracking, and we can see the arms down here on the ground. We've got some cracking that's coming up in the leg, some that's happening on the background elements. So we've got a story that's happening through here. And I love me some storytelling. So it's always kind of fun to see how we can use Photoshop or other art tools to help convey that story, the stuff that's happening with it. So as we're looking at it, I'm looking at a couple of things on the techniques. One's going to be our special effects stuff, and the other one's the rest of the processing. So in terms of core processing for having our subject pop out in a very fine art way, almost like you'd expect to see like a statue, I think that's handled really, really well. The highlights and the rim lights that are coming through, they aren't over the top. We've got some great detail that's in all of those spaces. It's just really, really nicely done. I like that we don't fade or have like the background fabric or anything just fade into nothingness. It feels like it's a natural fall off. We've got some natural light direction, some of the harsher light that's coming down here. We've got those casted shadows. Everything's making sense in terms of the physics of the scene. Done really, really well. And I do appreciate the muted tones too. It is very, very easy to go crazy overboard and crank up saturation on things, especially when we're doing art pieces. This one I think is done really well because we've got that subtle undertones to it. So let's look at some of the special effects stuff, because I think this is the most notable aspect of this, is that we're doing something interesting. We don't see very many one-armed people that are cracking. So let's look at what's happening in this kind of effect. And we've got this kind of drawn-on crackling effect, almost like it's fragmented or starting to fall apart. And that effect continues on when we're looking at what's happening with the arm that's fallen down, that center line continuing right there. It feels like it belongs together, fell apart at the joint. Looking at the feet, we also have kind of a cool texture effect that's coming, and it's got this kind of splintering effect with some highlights and some shadows that are up here. So I've got a guess in terms of how this effect was accomplished, and I want to kind of share with you too how I would go about doing that and what we can do to kind of add some fun elements to it. So I'm going to pull up just a hard brush. I'm going to change my hardness to 100%, and let's get real small, like a 2 pixel. So now I can draw in. I'm not going to be the artist when it comes to drawing on these things, but I'll just add some up here so that we can kind of play along. Oop. Let's set my brush to black, and I'm hitting D, the letter D, which resets our brushes to our default. So we can have kind of our cracks that are coming throughout. And we're going to pretend like these look like good cracks. You can use a reference image if you want. Coming up here. So we got some cracks that are there. We're splintering. We can maybe play with size a little bit more too if you want to have one that's a little bit bigger or smaller or something there. Maybe a main primary track that it's going. And maybe some smaller that are kind of coming off. Okay, so we've got that. That's enough. The point isn't how well I can draw lines, but the fact that we're getting some cracks. These ones look way cooler. So we've got this coming up here. So now blending modes and layer effects. Oh, so much fun. So I'm going to come up and we're going to enter our blending options. And this is a screen that's going to come up here, blending options if you ever need to get there. Chances are you've seen this if you want to add like a drop shadow or something to your image. But we've got the ability to adjust both our opacity and our fill opacity. So if we take down opacity, it's just going to remove everything from the image, including all the effects that we apply. However, if we take down the fill opacity, it's going to take down the core image, but not touch our effects. So I pull that down. Right now, they look the same. But if I were to do something like, say, add a drop shadow to this, okay, drop shadow, I'm coming back to the blending options. Normal opacity, everything disappears, including the drop shadow. Fill opacity comes down and the drop shadow stays, but everything that we drew on disappears. This is where we can start having some really fun with it. I'm going to take off that drop shadow, and I'm going to come back here. Oh, take off the drop shadow. See if I can unclick it. There we go. Come back here to blending, and I'm going to take the fill opacity down, so we're only going to see the effects that are applied to it. So up first, I'm going to hit bevel and emboss. And up here, we can say, ooh, let's get some cool beveling. And this is very likely, oh, I can't, I'm going to get out of here for just a second. Very likely the technique that we're going to be using down here when we have these highlights and shadows that are coming through. So we can get it, but I'm going to pop up into this, to our blending options and our bevel and emboss. Oh, I forgot to take down the fill opacity because I didn't hit OK. I just canceled out. So we can say, all right, let's take some of our depth and start playing with it. And we got the ability to go through quite a few different types of bevels. So we've got outer bevels, inner bevels, stroke embossing. We could do some fun stuff. And so we can play with the depth that's on them. I'll go outer bevel so we can see what this is happening a little bit more. And we can see that by adjusting the size, we can give it more or less of that bevelly effect, and we can kind of blend it out just a little bit more. And we can also change the direction, whether it's going up or down, or the perceived up or down on it, as well as the overall depth or kind of strength that we have of this image. So I'm going to switch this from outer bevel to maybe an emboss, where it's going to be kind of pushing into the skin, and we're going to be very subtle on that. There we go. And we can kind of play with that size, and again, we want it pretty defined, so I don't want to get too soft and blurry that's coming through. There we go. We've got something that's kind of nice here. I do want to try to match the lighting in my scene. And if I look up here, I can see, because of this beautiful shadow that we have, that our light's coming up here from this direction. So I can change the angle of this. So our light's coming from about the same direction. So that means our highlights are going to come from the same direction, and our shadows are going to be in the same direction. So kind of cool that we can play with that. And we can now change some of the blending modes on this. And if this is getting a little bit too in the weeds for you, that's okay. By default, this is going to be up here as lighten, and we're going to have something that's in multiply, and we can have maybe like a lighter color that's up here, adding our highlights and our shadows. So I like to select for our shadows a color from the scene, maybe something that's kind of this darker brown, and say, okay, that's kind of nice. And I like multiply just because we get some nice combinations coming through with it. And in our highlights, I don't really need a highlight in this one because we're kind of like fractured or broken. So we could play with a different color, like maybe a multiply or a darken might be kind of cool that's in here. And we can play with just different colors. So what we can do to add a little bit of depth to this. And we don't need a ton that's on it, just that little teeny tiny bit. So now with just the bevel and emboss on here, we've added a little bit of shadowing and a little bit of highlighting to where this main area is. And of course we can take it down or up depending on what our personal preference is. like it pretty subtle that's on there. We've got that little bit of crack that's starting to happen. So that's just one thing with the bevel and emboss. We can continue it on if we wanted to add like some contouring or some shaping. You can play with that one. I'm not going to get into that too much, but I do want to show you an outer glow. Where's that one? Down here. I'm going to click outer glow and say, by default, we're going to have a color. Let me come up here and change that up. And this is just basically on the outside of where our image is. What do we want it to do? We might expect around a crack or fracture or something to have a little bit of redness that's on there. So I can take kind of a reddish color and say, you know what, that might be something that we see on our subject. Say, okay. And we can change the blending mode to see if we can find something that's got a cool look or an effect, like it might be, say, an injury or something that's kind of going there. Maybe add a little noise if you don't want it perfectly smooth. There we go. Got something that's happening up here. And we can then just take down the opacity on this until it's a subtle kind of color that's starting to happen in here. Just that little bit of light coming through. Maybe makes it feel like it's starting to kind of blur. And if we need to, we can spread that out more and kind of diffuse it. So just playing around. Most of the stuff is just playing and doing it to taste. How much do you like? How much do you want it to go there? How much is too much? And I think in most cases, subtle is really, really nice. So we've got this mix that's up here. I'm going to come back up here to our blending options. And now, remember, we took the fill opacity down before. So if we were to take this fill opacity and start increasing it, we can add in some of our black that we originally had. Doesn't have to be full 100%, but we can pull it back just a little bit. So it's got some texture where it's starting to feel like maybe we've got a highlight, maybe we've got a shadow that's kind of following some of the natural contours of it. And this is all done through these layer styles. I absolutely love it. So if you are working on layer styles, and let's say that we have it going forward, I'm going to hit OK on this one. And let's say that we move this, and now it's partway on the shirt, and we don't want it to be there. We could try masking out our image and say, okay, I'm going to get this masking, and we're just going to, let's go with black, paint it out right there. And it does a pretty good job, but it's going to continue those effects that some of that red bleeding might come across. So if you're starting to mask out something that's not hitting everything that you want, we can come up here in the blending options mode, and we just want to check the layer that says layer mask hides effects. And that means then that anything that you mask out is going to get rid of these effects as well. So we've got that hard line that's not going to go into our image. Oop. Oh, I am just all over on that one. There we go. Back on the mask. So we can paint that in or get rid of it so that it goes exactly up to where we want it to be and it's not following out. So this can be a really cool way of just adding a little bit of extra depth to the image. I think this is done really, really tastefully, but might be kind of fun to merge somewhere between this style, and what we have down here at the bottom. So the light that I'm looking at down here messes with me just a little bit because it looks like we've got the same effect applied in both the areas that are hitting highlights and areas that are in total shadows. So this area that has almost no light, I wouldn't expect to see a highlight in those areas. So if we were to take these ones down that are in the shadowed areas and leave them fully pronounced when we are in the full brightness, that would add another layer of realism to me for this one. So kind of fun looking at this one. Out the full back, I think this looks more tasteful. This looks like maybe she was amputated or something that's done up here. So again, it's personal preference, and it's kind of that magic area of art as we're coming together and seeing what's working for our image, what's working for the message I'm wanting to come across or to convey on it. But I think it's fun to learn how to use new tools on this one. Anybody here using the layer effects? Do we use beyond just what drop shadow is? Anybody doing anything fun with it? Want to share? Yes, Andrew does. John saying that layer styles were tough to manage, so it's totally out of my element on this one. So kind of fun that you got to play with it. How did you get the tattoo only? Did you trace the tattoo first and then apply the bevel emboss? Oh, so Queen Bee was, I'm guessing, wondering, how did you get this shape? Oop. Coming up. I just drew it by hand when I had done mine, but I'd imagine that you can find the distressing texture online quite easily. You could probably generate it, or looking for something that's a natural texture like dried mud could be kind of a cool way of getting some of these distressed cracks that are coming through. Quite a few places to find it. I really, really enjoy the website Texture Labs. They have a ton of free stock textures like cool cutouts and things like that, old paper, that sort of stuff. So if you're doing something and you need that little bit extra, Texture Labs could be a really cool way of looking at that, or just finding other stock images or taking them yourself. All right. This is the last. We're just going with all of John's that are on here. Last image of his that was submitted. And we've got kind of a neat reverse silhouette or a faceless image that's up here. And we've got a really strong, even rim light that's coming through. And we've got the total facelessness. So really nice control of the light. So something that's kind of interesting here in terms of this technique that is challenging to do unless you know the technique that's being used. And then you're like, all right, I'm never giving this one up. So we've got really, really even lighting all the way around. This is so hard to do. If we're using something like strip boxes or other lights that are behind our subjects or maybe pointing in like we do in like traditional sports portraits or something like that, we're going to end up with some areas that get brighter, some areas that get darker, some areas where we don't have even overlap. Notice how beautiful this is. We've got very, very even lighting going everywhere. And kind of a cool way of doing that, especially if you're doing like product photography, is to have like a really large light source, maybe like a large octabox or umbrella that's behind your subject. And then right in front of it, you can stick a black card or a piece of background paper or foam core with it just wide enough to cover your subject, but to still leave extra room around it of the softbox. And then your subject stands in front of that and you just compress, so using a little bit more of a telephoto lens, in so that your subject's lined up and only on the background, so only on that black piece of foam core, say, with it. What that's going to do is that this large light source now is going to wrap around your subject, and that's exactly what we're seeing here, and we get that really, really beautiful, consistent, even lighting all the way across. So this is really common if you're doing like commercial or product photography. Like let's say you have a wine bottle that you want to light, and you want to have an even rim light around it. This is the way that we go about doing it. And he's done it uniquely in a portrait, which is kind of fun. I do appreciate kind of the layers of this where we have this faceless area. So normally we don't just see the silhouette of a human. We like to see the face. We want to connect with the eyes. I mentioned earlier that I love to have the eyes in focus. This one, we don't have the eyes on there. That makes you think, right? We don't see this sort of look very often. Maybe it's an alien, maybe it's a superhero, maybe we're supposed to imagine ourselves as this subject. So kind of cool that we've got a little bit extra storytelling here, and that's all controlled through light. So the mask of the face just isn't getting the light, and it's all the rim that we're getting that really, really nice aspect, or that depth that's coming across with it. Do have one little pet peeve that's on here, and I'm looking at our sharpness. So where are we focusing on it? And I can see that right at the front where we kind of have the mask of the face is tack sharp, and we get blurry as we go back to where like the ears and the hair are starting to go. The shoulders were going into full blur. So I would love it if we had sharpness where those ears and those temples are, so that everything that was in this was tack sharp. We're not gaining a whole lot by having a shallow depth of field, and the area that we'd expect to be tack sharp and locking in on is totally blacked out. We don't get to see any of it. So for me, I'd either change where my focus point is or have a greater depth of field so that I can get both that same point, that front point, and those ears, or what that true silhouette or the rim is going to be looking like. I am okay with the shoulders are being a little bit softer if we can mix that magic area. But kind of a cool technique. I love using that for doing product photography. It's fun. All right. We've got this image from Jerry, and this is just nicely done. So we've got our bird that's coming through. This is a lower resolution image, so we can't pick it apart quite as much, and we can just admire it from afar. So looking at it, the maker has done a really nice job of preserving details in a bird. It's really easy to blow out these highlights. We've just preserved that just so beautifully. I also appreciate that we've got an interesting depth of field. The bokeh looks fun. It doesn't look too specular. We've got some interesting shape and texture that's coming through. So we've got some depth, and kind of the chaos here makes the feathers feel a little bit more seamless, a little bit more elegant and flowy. So I like what's happening here in the setting and the scene. The greens are harmonizing. The yellows are working really, really nicely on this. I do wish we had a little bit more space. It does feel like it's a tight portrait, maybe for identifying the bird, more than an art piece. So if we had a little bit more room or space, maybe above and to the right of it, so room for him to fly into the image, That could be really nice. This could also be one that's kind of fun to look at in reverse so that maybe it's leading into the frame. I'll just flip that up here, and we can go up here and we can just flip it, and we're going to flip it horizontal. Enter it, that's up here. So this one, now we're leading into the bird, and we get kind of that nice feather that kind of keeps us from being locked out. This one, we're following the bird as it goes out of the frame. Do you prefer the original or the mirrored image? What are we thinking on this one? Original or mirrored? Heidi likes the mirrored one. All right. Bruce is giving a thumbs up on that. Andrew's liking the mirrored. Isn't it strange just how that little bit of a flip can completely change how we feel and experience the image? And I'd be kind of curious on if we were to take this outside of our Western culture and say, look at it in a country that maybe isn't reading left to right, top to bottom. Are they going to prefer it one way over the other? Kind of an interesting thing. All right. So we've got glowing, and this is an image from Yeti, and this is in the artist category. And so this, if we're entering an artist image, we're going to be looking at, in a PPA style competition, we're going to be looking at how well did they combine the different elements and how well did they transform it from what the original source image is. And so I'm looking at this, and it looks like we have this sunset sky that maybe got a painting effect to it. And we've got the bird that's been extracted and then a bit of a painting effect to it. So in terms of overall difficulty, this one's not super challenging. So an artist image doesn't necessarily have to be really high level of difficulty in order for it to be effective. In fact, you could spend just a few minutes with an image, but if you do exactly what it needs to the image, that might be all that it's needed. I've had images merit that I've timed myself and spent no more than 15 minutes on, and I've gotten merits with them. So it is possible to do it. I've also had images that I've spent 40 hours on that don't merit. So it's not the degree of difficulty or the amount of work that you put in, but it's how impactful that final image is, and is everything working. So this one that's submitted, and I'm pretty sure it's through email, that I'm getting some really serious banding that's going on with it. I'm not sure if you guys can see this, but I see a lot of banding and artifacting that's happening inside the image. So I'm not sure if that's present in the original one, but if it is, we need to go back to the drawing board. That's our deal breaker right there. We're not moving beyond that point. Next, I'm looking at the effectiveness of our bird's transformation. So our extraction did a pretty good job. I'm seeing maybe a little bit of haloing. I can't quite tell if that's banding or I'm seeing artwork that's done to it. It looks like we've changed the colors and the tonality of the bird just a little bit. It looks pretty convincing that's up there. But let's evaluate the image as a whole. And I think this is a really good one for us to chat about because the techniques are done pretty well. Yeti's an amazing painter that's up here. So I'm pretty happy with that one. But I want to look at the colors that are coming through to this. So I'm going to pull up my eyedropper and get my color picker that's up here. And so we've got this, and we can start looking at colors. So I'm going to pull a color from the background, and we're going to look at some stuff together with it. So I just picked one of these brighter tones that we had up here, and I want you to pay attention to our saturation and our brightness values. So our saturation, meaning how vivid are these colors, okay, could go all the way up to 100 where we're very saturated. This one's sitting around 50 right here, okay? And our brightness, how light can we be, how dark can we be, okay? So our brightness, we're about 60 on here. So we're kind of middle of the road on these ones. And if I sample around in a couple of other areas, I can get 40% saturation and about 30% brightness. Come over here, and I'm about 40. So I can see that I don't have anything that's super bright, and I don't have anything that's super saturated. Like the brightest spot in this is going to be up here. I'm at 83% brightness, but my saturation's still pretty low. So this makes sense for the scene to have the upper left be bright because that's sun that's kind of cascading down. I'd expect that to be the brightest and probably down here to be the darkest, which it totally is. So now let's look at the bird, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so we can see. I'm going to pick on the beak right here. Look at what's happening here. My saturation's at 75% and my brightness is at 99%. Wow, now have the brightest thing by far in the image right here on this beak and the most saturated. Before we weren't even hitting 50% on anything. Now we're at 75%. If I look at the colors that are on the bird over here, look at that. These numbers are all up really high. If I get into the shadow areas, it gets down a little bit lower. Look at that. Saturation's at 94%. So we're getting really, really bright, vivid colors that are coming through with this. Uh-oh, that doesn't quite match the scene. The setting is very muted colors, and our subject is very, very bright. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this and put us into camera raw real quick, because I love camera raw. And I'm just going to do a quick mask on our subject. I bet it finds our subject pretty well. Look at that. It did it. So we can come down here, and now we can start playing with this and saying, you know what? Our brightness, let's take that down just a little bit. And so I'm going to take some of these whites and maybe just pull them back just a little bit. I'm going to take some of these highlights and pull them back just a little bit. Maybe flatten it out by lifting up some of the blacks just a hair. Shadows just a hair. Maybe lowering that contrast and the overall exposure. So we're just darkening that down just a little bit. Now we're starting to get something that feels a little bit more in key with it. And I'm going to take the colors and that saturation. Remember, we were pretty saturated. I'm going to pull those down just a little bit too. Maybe somewhere around 20% that's up here. There we go. And I think our colors were pretty nice. They seemed to be pulled from the scene. We could try to change the colors if we wanted to, cool them off just a little bit, but I kind of liked where it was. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit OK. And we just brought down on our subject the colors, so our brightness and our saturation. So now if I were to pull this up and say sample that beak, look at that, we're brightness at 81. Before we were at 99 on this one. Sampling around some other areas, we're in the 60s and 70s, which means that we could probably go even further on this and it'd still feel like it's in the scene, but I like to have the subject pop. So this one feels a little bit more harmonized with it, kind of a before and after on it. Kind of interesting. So making sure that we've got the same ballpark when we're looking at saturation and we're looking at our tonal values kind of helps the images feel like they belong together. Just looking at those values, kind of a cool way of doing that. So let me show you another cool feature that's in Photoshop that we can use to kind of check our gut reactions on this. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this one more time, and let's select our subject. We'll let it find that once again, and I'm just going to put a mask on this. And when we add a mask to this image, we now in our contextual taskbar have a new button that says Harmonize. So this is generative, so you probably can't use it inside a competition, but we can totally use it when we're trying to evaluate what an image needs, so we can use it as a reference tool, no problem. What it did is I've got the bird selected, and I'm going to hit this Harmonize, so it's going to use AI to say, okay, let's balance this bird with the background, and we'll see what it does. So I'm going to hit this Harmonize. It's going to think through what it's looking like. We're going to get it there. I'm excited to see the results. We're doing it live together. Hey, there we go. So we've got 3 variations that are on it. Notice it's adding a little bit of a reflection. I think this is water that's down here. Kind of fun. So we'll go with our first one that it's selected by default. And I'm just going to go ahead and mask out that reflection because it's flying. It's not right above water. Ooh, let me actually get black on there. There we go. So here's what it thought it needed to look like, the original. And here's what it thinks that it's toned in. Here's was ours. Which one do you like better? Do you like the original, AI, or the one that we did by hand? What are we thinking on this one? Here's the one that we did by hand. Here's the AI. And here's the original. Let's see. John's going for the AI. Anybody else have a preference on here? The original? The one that was done by hand. All right. I think that speaks pretty cleanly to what art is, right? Same image. We had 3 different techniques that were on there, and we had 3 different opinions on which one was best. I'd make an argument that the one that we did by hand is probably the most technically correct one in terms of harmonizing the 2 images together, although it might lose some of the depth that the original image had. So this could be something where we can say, let's take that toning that we did and maybe back it off just a little bit, pull back in some of those vibrant colors that we had. Looking at. So something fun that we can kind of play with that's on it. But I like it. Looks something. I can't quite tell what Tammy was typing. AI looks something. Looks like the middle ground. All right. As Tammy was saying, this one kind of got lost in that middle section that's up there. So either way, we've got some fun times and fun images to look at, but it has been an hour already. That means office hours is coming to an end. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining me today. It's been a ton of fun. I'm Chris Wooley, the photo professor, and if you do have photo questions, things that you want to discuss, images or techniques that you want to go over, this is all about learning, coming together as a group and figuring out how can we get better at photography, how can we start making better decisions to improve our photographs. I love it. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye, everyone.